In this video, we're going to learn Python, JavaScript, and PHP at the same time. By at the same time, I mean there are a lot of things common between these languages. So you can learn all of these languages with really similar syntaxes and functionalities. So for instance, if we try to learn variables in Python at the same time, we will learn the same things in JavaScript and PHP because pretty much defining variables in these three languages are pretty much similar. You will see that. And that's the reason why we want to learn these three languages at the same time, because not only it gives you the idea of how the other languages work, but also it helps you to learn each language better. And at the end, you will learn all these three languages with just one course, and that's amazing. So in this course, I'm going to cover all the basic things from defining variables to, defining functions and doing all sorts of things. And basically after this course, after this crash course, you will be able to work as a programmer if you learn the things that I'm going to tell you really well. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this. So let's start learning these three languages at the same time. For you to learn things better, actually, I came up with a task, a really simple but useful and important task, which can help you to understand concepts better. It's a really simple example, but it's really powerful if you understand it and if you do it exactly as I do. And basically with simple tasks, you can pretty much learn everything about programming, all the fundamental and basic things. Now in this video, because we want to be really fast and we want to start learning right away, we don't want to waste our time on setting up languages on our local machine. Instead, I want to use an online tool to write code and execute my codes. So here I want to use onecompiler.com website, which is actually an online compiler. Here you can select any language you want and you can go with that and try that language right away without doing anything. It's a good way if you want to learn programming languages right away without, doing the basic stuff like setting up the language, doing configurations on your local machine, and etc. But the problem with this method is that actually, even it's so quick and fast to work with, it's not really useful for actual development. If you want to actually develop a website or a project, you need to actually do the setup on your local machine for that specific language and for that specific framework. But here we have all languages all together and we can start learning most of the syntaxes here. There are some syntaxes and comments that are not possible to try here, but it's good enough to do most of things we want. So I highly recommend, if you're new to programming, don't start with setting up your local because it's real time consuming. You need to install all sorts of things to make it work. But here with this tool, onecompiler.com, or there are other websites as well that can do the same thing. It's really easy with these kind of tools. So here, for instance, I'm in onecompiler.com and I can choose Python, for instance. It's Python 3. If you want to work with Python 2, you can choose Python 2. But I don't recommend it. Go with Python, which is by Python 3 actually. And this is what we want to work. And at the same time, I'm going to open two other tabs. Oops. Here, I want to choose JavaScript. And in another tab, I want to open PHP. So here, if I, for instance, say print hello world, I can run it here. You see, it's a message. And I can do the same thing in JavaScript. Here we have console.log to print things, to show things, show messages to the user. We have console.log. I will talk about these things later, but this is the really simple test. And also in PHP, we can use echo, or we can use same function as what we have in Python. So print, and this is what we have. So this is a really quick, simple test. So let's continue with reading the task, reading the project we have, and then start learning step by step different concepts. And based on those concepts, we can complete the task. let's go. Before we start learning, I want to talk about something else, which is actually at the moment I'm working on my course, which is actually the same thing. I'm going to create a course for learning Python, JavaScript, and PHP at the same time. But in that course, I'm going to cover all the important things in more details because in this crash course, we want to go through all the fundamental things. I'm going to teach you all the important things, but I'm not going to go into details because it's going to take a lot of time. And I don't want to make you confused with all these things. I just want to show you the big things, the important functionalities, important pieces in programming. And then on top of that, you can start learning more and more. And that's the whole point of this video. This is the course I'm working on, all sorts of examples and slides and a lot of details here. I'll let you know as soon as it's ready. But for now, let's go with this crash course. So here is the task. It says that consider you have a list of students with their first name, last name, and score. Print the following message for all the students. Keep in mind that the minimum score for passing the test is 2.5. So this is the message we want to print, show to the user actually. The score for student full name, this here should be full name, student's full name. This is the score, and this should be the score of this student. This student has passed or not passed the test. So basically based on this number and the score for the student, we need to decide if the student passed or not passed the exam. It's a really simple example, but you will see that it's really powerful, and with this you can learn all things around programming. So this is the chart actually we're gonna learn things based on. So we want to start with variables and defining variables and work with variables and start from there. So let's go ahead. So here we are in Python, but why we need variable? Basically, a variable is like a bottle. It's like a container that you can keep food there. You can keep water there. A variable is a space that you can keep your numbers, your data there, and you can use it later. That's the whole point of variables. And basically, if I want to talk technically, a variable is a space in your RAM in your computer that can keep all the data in zeros and ones. And that's the whole point of variables. So here in Python, I can say that, for instance, if I want to have a variable to keep the name of student, first name, for instance, I can say that first name equals to whatever I want. Let's say John, like this. Also, I can have last name as Smith, and I can also keep score as well. So I can say score, let's say 4. It's really easy here. Now, if I run the program, you will see nothing. The reason is that it just executed the program, but it doesn't show anything because we didn't ask it. To ask the program to show something to us, we can use print in Python. So I can say that print first name, then print last name, and print score. So I have these variables, and now I ask the program to print things for me, to print the variables for me. If I run this, you see the value inside these variables, John Smith 4. It's really simple. Now we can do the same thing in JavaScript, pretty much the same. So to define variables in JavaScript, we need to use a keyword called var. And here we say that, for instance, first name equals to John, last name equals to Smith, and score equals to, let's say, 4. You can name variables whatever you want. You can use underline here, you can use uppercase letter here, but there are some conventions in each language that it's better to follow for clean coding to look more professional. From clean coding's point of view, it's really important to follow these conventions. So for instance, in Python, if a variable contains a lot of words, it's better to separate the words based on underline. However, in JavaScript, we like to actually use uppercase. Basically, it's called camel case naming. Instead of underline or underscore, we prefer to use uppercase letter like this. Also in PHP, we like to go with this kind of naming as we have in JavaScript. Now, after defining the variables we want, now it's time to actually print the variables to see the value they have. So in JavaScript, we can use console.log instead of print function. We have console.log to print the variables and anything we want. And here I can say that console.log first name, and I can do the same thing for other variables. Just copy and paste. And you can see the value here. So one thing I wanna tell you is that it's not really necessary to add this, but it's recommended that you add semicolons at the end of sentences, at the end of basically syntaxes and statements in JavaScript. It's not necessary, but to follow clean coding principles, it's good to do it. Now it's time to see how we can do the same thing in PHP. PHP is pretty much similar, to JavaScript, but in some cases it's like Python. So it's in between, you can say. The only thing I need to do, I can just copy this and paste it here. As you can see, when we want to write a code in PHP, in most cases, we need to add this PHP tag because in the old days, there were PHP in combination with HTML and other things as well, even JavaScript. Now the naming convention is similar to JavaScript. The only thing is different here is that actually instead of var, you need to add $sign in the beginning of the variable. So also semicolon is necessary in PHP. You need to add it if I remove semicolons here, if I run it, you see it shows me an error. So I need to add semicolon here. Now for printing the variables, you can use print function here as well, like Python. So I can just grab this, copy it, paste it here. Oops. And I can do the same thing for other variables. Last name and score. One short key if you want to copy a line and paste it to another line is just you can use Shift Alt and press down arrow key. So like this. So let's run it. Okay, we have John, Smith, and 4, and because actually in PHP print function prints everything without any space, you need to add some spaces to make it clear. So here I can add some space like this. Now it looks better. Okay, this is the very first thing you need to learn in every programming languages, which is defining variables. So now it's time to go to the next level. The other thing I want to talk about is constant variables. The task here we have, it says that we need a variable for keeping the minimum score for passing the test. So it's 2.5. We want to keep it somewhere that after that we can compare the student's score with that threshold to see if student passes the test or not. So we want to keep this score somewhere. We can just use a regular variable like passing score, and we can keep it like this, and we can use it later. Or in these cases that the value is fixed throughout the program because we don't want to change this 2.5. It's a fixed number that we just want to use it from now on. In these cases, we like to define it as a const variable. The only thing we need to do in Python is just writing the variable in uppercase letters. There is no difference between these two kind of namings from Python's point of view, but it's rather for us to to remember that this is a fixed value, a constant value, so we don't touch it. Later on in the code, if I see it somewhere, I know that this is a constant variable that I shouldn't touch it. If I want to change the number, I need to go where it's defined already and change it from there. In Python, it's just convention that it's better to follow, but there is no const variable there. There is no separate type for that. But in JavaScript, we have a separate type. Actually, instead of var, we can say that const. And also here, it's better to use uppercase letters. Passing score. So passing score is 2.5. Also in PHP, we can use a regular variable or we can define a const variable. So to define a const variable in PHP, you can use define function. In some cases that I don't remember something, it's really common and you don't have to memorize everything and you don't have to remember everything. And when you forget something, the only thing you need to learn here is that you need to know that we have something in, for instance, in PHP or Python. Later on, you can search for it, you can Google for it and understand how you can use it. So here, I'm not quite sure how I can use define variable and a const variable in PHP. So here I can use Google for that, how to define, PHP, how to define const variable in PHP. For instance, in W3 schools, we have a good example here you can use, or we can actually ask ChatGPT, which is really simple. So how can I define const variable in PHP and use it? So it's a good example here. So we just need to copy that and paste it over here and passing score. And I set it to 2.5. Now when I want to use it, actually when I want to print it, there is no need to add the $sign. I can just use this variable name without anything. So also copy this and paste it here, run it 2.5. So this is how you can define const or fixed variables in PHP. And the same thing in JavaScript. And now if I try to override this number, this value here, let's say we want to change it to 3. If I don't do it, if I run it, you see there is no error. But if I override the value, you see it shows me an error here. And basically it says that assignment to constant variable. So it's an error here. And also the same thing in PHP will happen. But in Python, you can actually change the value and nothing will happen because there is no such thing as const variable in Python. It's more of a convention that you need to follow. Okay, that's enough for variables. I think we can continue with the next thing, which is actually data types. So as you saw, we have different kinds of types. We have numbers, strings, also we have booleans. There are some basic types that on top of those we have other kinds of more complicated variable types or data types actually. But first we want to talk about the basic ones. So we saw how to define, numbers and strings or texts basically. So if you want to define texts or strings, you can use double quotation in all the languages here. You see, they are pretty much similar. And you can, if you want to use numbers, you can just type the number without any, quotation, without wrapping it in double quotations. And it's really easy in this kind of languages because there are dynamically typed actually, because you don't have to define the type of the variable. And as soon as you assign a value to that variable, it understands the type of the variable. It does this automatically, so you don't have to define the type of the variable, and it's called a dynamically typed language. In other languages like Java or C++, you need to define the type of the variable as well before assigning a value to that. But in these three languages, it's really easy to work with because you don't have to define the data type. Also, we have another kind of basic data type, which is Boolean. So let's say that we want to say that this student is passed the test or not passed the test. We can define another variable like this, has passed. And instead of actually assigning a string like this, for instance, you can say that passed, or you can say that 1 has passed or 0 has not passed. We can use Boolean data type, which is like this. You can say that true, or you can say false. It makes it easier for you to work with this kind of data. You can live without that, that's fine. Even if you don't use it, you can use strings or numbers for that purpose, but it's kind of easier to just use this kind of data types in these situations that you are facing two different options. So if I print it, you will see the, sorry, name passed, and you can see that it's false. Now, one thing I'd like to do is that I want to print the type of the variables instead of the value they contain. So I can say that I think it's type in Python. Now let me to print this. So you can see that first name str or string actually, string int, which is basically number. If I print the type of passing score here, let's say print type passing score. So it's float. Basically, it's with the decimal number, it's float, or if it's just round number, it's integer. But basically, both are numbers. And the last one is Boolean. So we have the same pretty much in JavaScript and PHP. So I'm not going to explain it that much, just want to try this there as well. So just let me copy this and paste it here. We have this already. Just need to copy this. Var has passed, false, and I think it should be with lowercase letter in JavaScript. Passing score take a look at the values. Okay, everything looks good. Now, in JavaScript, to see the type of the variables, you can use type of. Can just copy, paste. And if I run this, you can see string for first name and last name, number for score and passing a score, and boolean for has passed variable. Now let's try it in PHP. I just need to copy this, paste it here, and use $sign instead of var. And in PHP, you can use lowercase or uppercase, doesn't matter, both works, but I think it's better to go with lowercase letter. And here also copy these. Something's not right here. Let's try uppercase. No, I'm not quite sure what the problem is here. Let's ask ChatGPT for it. So how to print a Boolean variable in PHP. Okay, so there are some kind of data types that actually print doesn't work for them, so you need to use other functions to print it. So maybe it didn't work either. Change it to lowercase. Nope. Maybe it's better to use var dump. Okay, yes. So here we use var dump, which is another function to print variables. It contains more information about the variable. It already contains the data type here. So in PHP to print data type, we can use function of get type, I think. Yes, we have a string here, and copy this. So I need to just print. So here we have a string, integer, double boolean. Double basically is similar to float when we have a decimal number. But you can see that it's pretty much similar in all these three languages. So these are basic data types that on top of that we can create other kinds of variables. We will talk about them as well later in this course. We also talked about printing variables, so we already did that. Now it's time to talk about this part, combining strings and numbers together. But before that, let's take a look at the task one more time. So here it asks us to print this. So let's just copy this and come here in Python. I think we can get rid of these lines, or maybe we can comment it. So with holding control and forward slash, actually you can turn them into comments. And by comment, I mean that when you put this sign here in Python, basically this is not a code anymore. So the compiler doesn't compile it and doesn't consider it as part of the code. It treats it as an explanation, You can put some text over here. You can, say that you can write down some explanation, some description for the code you want. For instance, if you want to, over here, you can say that this variable is for keeping the score. So this way you can use comments, and it's not code. It's not part of the code actually, but it's just a description. It's just a text. So here, instead of basically deleting the code, I just want to keep them there, but I don't want the compiler to compile them and to execute them. So I just need to somehow hide it so I can use comments there. In Python, you can use this hashtag, basically, or sharp symbol. Here in JavaScript, you can use double forward slash, and in PHP also you can use double forward slash as well here. And holding control and forward slash in Windows, and I think command and forward slash in Mac, you can do the same thing. So now I have the text here. So I want to keep it somber. I can say message and just need to fix it. And I can print it. Print message. So I have the message here. Now I need to replace all the values here with the variables I have. So because I don't want to have the student full name here, I want to have the actual student's name. So I can use variables I already defined here. How I can do it, that's what I'm going to show it to you. So basically we want to concatenate strings with strings. There are multiple ways to concatenate, to combine different strings together to create a single string. There are different ways in different languages, and we want to try a couple of them. So to attach a string, you can go ahead like this. You can use plus sign to attach or concatenate different strings together. So here, instead of this, I can use the variable, which is basically a string, and I need a space between last name and first name, and I can use it here, and then I have another text. So now let's run it. You can see that here I have John Smith. We need some space here. And if I run it again, the score for John Smith is score. So you can see that we replace the variable with the actual values, which is really amazing. Now, the other thing we need to do, we want to replace the score with the score here we have. But the problem is that if I try to do this, let's see what happens. So there is an error. The reason is that it's score, it's a number. You can just concatenate it with a string. So first you need to convert it to a string. So with str function, you can convert a number to a string in Python. And this way we have 4. Actually, this 4 now here is string. It's not anymore a number. And this way we have message. So the only thing left to replace is this passed or not passed, which is Boolean, and we will talk about it in a moment. Let's try to do the same thing in other languages. What happens if I just copy this and paste it in JavaScript? Will it work or not? So I can define var message here and can use console.log. Remember to add semicolon there. So it doesn't work like this. Let's use the actual variable names. We don't have str function in JavaScript, and we don't need it actually. The good point about JavaScript here is that when you want to combine number with string, automatically it converts it to a string. So you can run this and you can see that it works fine. The score for John Smith is 4. Now let's do the same thing in PHP. So I want to copy this and paste it over here. We can use print function. Remember to add the $sign. So in PHP, instead of plus sign, we need to use dot to attach strings. Okay, let's run it to see. Well, it works fine. Amazing. So pretty much by copy and pasting the same code and changing some small things, you can make it work. And that's the reason why I'm teaching 3 languages at the same time, because the syntaxes are pretty much the same. I told you that there are a couple of ways to do it. Another way to do it, which is more professional and more common actually, is using in Python is using a format function or a function. So I can say message, I can use F, and in between here, I can use, let me do it like this. I can just copy this text over here, copy that, and I paste it here. And now what I need to do, just I can directly put the variable I want there. I don't need to separate strings. So I can use curly brackets and put the variables there just like this. And last name and score. Remember to convert it to string. So like this. Let's try it. If I comment this, you can see that it works fine. And it's more professional and it's more readable actually. It's easier to read, it's easier to work with, and you don't have to split the strings into smaller strings. So we have the same thing in JavaScript. I can just copy this and paste it here, use var. Let me comment this one here. We don't have F function, but rather we use backticks here. Okay, that's it. And here before curly brackets, we need to use $sign. Get rid of str. And let's run this. Okay, something's wrong. Oh, okay. We need to fix the variable names and we can just run it. And you can see that it works fine. So we can do the same thing in PHP with a small difference there. Okay, so I can say $sign. And here we need to use a function. It's called sprintf. And here we can't directly inject the variables here, but rather we need to use the symbols. For instance, here we want to have strings, so we can say that percent sign and s, percent sign s. It means that we want to have a string here, and here we want to have a number, so we can say percent d. And after this, we need to feed our variables. Last name and score. Okay, let's see how it looks. Okay, it looks similar as before, but this way is, it's more convenient, I suppose. Now we are really close to solve this puzzle, solve this example. There are a couple of more things we need to talk about. So let's continue. Now it's time to talk about more advanced data types that are based on the basic data types. So here in this task, it says that it asks us that, print the information for a list of students, not only one student. So we have different students, a list of students actually. So here in this program, we can actually have, the names like this, first name 1, and we can copy this and paste it here and say that first name 2. But consider this, that what happens if we have hundreds or even thousands of students? It's not really a good way to define a variable for each specific student. It's not a good way. But rather we can use something called arrays or lists. So in Python we have a list actually. So let me fix this. So we can say that we want to have list of students. Okay, we want to have a list of students, and with brackets you can define a list. So you can say that, John, then you can have another name. Let's ask ChatGPT to give me 10 first last name. Last name, first name and last name together. Okay, we can go ahead with this, and actually I can copy 5 of these. That's enough. Paste it over here, and I can go ahead with Emma, Olivia, Noah, or Miss Liam. Let's put it there. And Eva, or Eva. Different pronunciations in different languages. So we have these 4 students. Now, if I print this, get rid of this. If I print this, you can see the list of all the names. So basically with list, we can keep a list of strings, a list of numbers. We can have all kinds of data in list. We can have a list of lists. That's possible. So basically, a list can contain anything, and even you can here add numbers to that. But it doesn't make sense here to have numbers and strings together. But it's just a demonstration. But actually what we want to keep all information in the list. We want to have first name, last name, and score. We will talk about it in a moment. So here we have another kind of data It's called dictionaries in Python. We can have student, let's call it object, student object, and we can define dictionaries with curly brackets. And I can say that I can just copy this and paste it over here. And instead of equals sign, we need to use colons, and I need to wrap first and last name with double quotations. So this kind of data is called key value pair data type. Basically, you have a key and you have a value. So with having a key, you can access the value for that key. Here I can print student object. Let's do it after this. And there is a problem here to fix this. So you can see that we have first name, John for first name, Smith for last name, 4 for score. Let's play a little bit with student object here. I can say that I want to have the name, I want to have the value for first name. So I can run it, and you see it prints John. Actually, with having the key, I can access to the value. So we will play with that later on, but what's the point of having the data like this? So basically, if we want to have a list of students' information, we want to keep the students' information in one place. So here we have the students' information in one single variable. Now we can use this to create the list of information. So I'm gonna do this. Instead of this, I can put list of students. I can say that I want to have this. So I told you that we can have a list of other kinds of data types. It doesn't need to be a string or a number. It can be anything, like your like dictionary. So here I have a list of dictionaries. Each dictionary contains information for specific student. So I can just copy this and paste it here. And I can use this name and put it here. Let's say score is 3.5. And I think I want to go ahead with 2. That's enough for now. You can continue the list forever, but that's enough. Now what happens if I print the list? Print it. You can see that it's a list of dictionaries. The good point about having a list is that actually later on you can use for loops or loops basically to loop through the list and do one specific thing for all the items in the list. We will see why we need to use list here. So this is called dictionaries, dictionary type in Python, and this is called having a list or basically array in Python. So let me comment these lines. This is what we want to keep. That's enough. Now we have pretty much the same thing in JavaScript and PHP. So let me just copy this and paste it over here. I'm not gonna explain the data types again. I'm just gonna try and see how we can use it. Var, and here I can use the list of students. And here instead of dictionary, we call it object in JavaScript. So to define an object, you don't need to use this basically double quotation around the keys, and we can go ahead like this. And console.log, let's see if it works or not. Okay, and need to fix this one and go ahead with that. Okay, see that it works pretty much similar to Python. Also, I can copy this, or actually here I can fix the naming to follow the JavaScript convention. That's the only thing you need to do. And let me start using uppercase letters for the names. Actually, you can use some functions to do it automatically. Write the code to do this with some functions, but we're not going to do that here. So that's good enough, I think. Let's try it in PHP. Let me copy that and put it here. So in PHP, in JavaScript, we don't have list. We call it array actually, and we don't have dictionary, and we call it object. In PHP, we have arrays as well, and instead of dictionary or object, we call these kind of data associative arrays, and it's defined in a different way. So here, instead of curly brackets, you need to use brackets. That's the first thing. And then instead of using colons here, you need to use equal sign and arrow signs like this. Fix the dollar sign. And here it's better to use print underline R or var dump to print the variable. So let's see. It seems that it works fine, but there is small problem there. Okay, so here we actually need to use double quotation. Let's try it now. Okay, there is no error. And it works fine. We have an array of associative arrays basically. So every item is related to a student, specific students. First name, last name, score. First name, last name, score. So we can later on we can use some functionalities called loops that we can actually loop through each element and do anything we want. We will see that. But that was the whole point of using basically lists or arrays and dictionaries or objects or associative arrays. The functionalities there are pretty much similar in all these languages, but the naming and, in some cases, there are something different about them, but they are pretty much similar. Now, one more important thing in programming is basically conditions. Before talking about for loops, I'd like to talk about conditions, if conditions. So here in this example, uh, here we want to basically, based on the score the student has, and based on the passing score we have here, we want to compare the student's score with this threshold and see if student has passed or not. So we can do this with basically if statements. So if I come here, I can say that, let's try a really simple example over here. I want to say that if score is greater than passing score here, print this for me. The student has passed. Else means that if this condition is not true, basically if score is equal to passing score or it's lower than the passing score, do this. Print the student has not passed. So let me print this, run this actually. So here, okay, we are in JavaScript. I made a mistake, so let me just grab this and put it here in Python. So here in Python, over here, I think it's good. You can run this and see that student has passed. If I change the score for the student, let's put it 2, it says that the student has not passed. Or we can actually add equal sign here as well. It means that if the score is greater than or equals to the passing score, the student has passed. Otherwise, the student has not passed the exam. So if I put it 2.5, you see that the student has passed. This is basically the functionality of if statements. It can get more complicated. You can use if else, for instance, here, but I'm not going to talk about them. It's going to make the course really complicated for you. I just wanted to have an introduction of if statements. Then you can, on top of this, learn more new things. So that's good enough for us to accomplish the task. So the point here is that here I want to print passed or not passed. So one thing I can do here, I can create another variable called, can say passing text. And here I can say that passed. And here I can not passed. So now I can use this variable instead of this part. Really easy. So I can use same way as before, and I can now print it. So let's see. You see the score for John Smith is 2.5. This student has passed the test. Now, if I change the score to, let's say, okay, let's say 2, if I run it, the student has not passed the test. So you can see that the output is based on the score we have here. It's basically dynamic. So we can have the if statements in JavaScript and PHP as well. So, but the syntaxes are a little bit different. Now here we are familiar with Boolean types. So instead of using this, I'd like to use a Boolean type. So I'm gonna use this has passed. So I can say that has passed false and has passed true. So later on, if we want to know if the student has passed the exam or not, we can just check this variable over here. So I can now get rid of the value. So now the question is that how I can use this has passed in this text over here. So basically we need to do the same thing pretty much. But the good point here is that we now have the value inside has passed. So we just need to say has passed like this. If the student has passed, if this is true, so we can say uh, same thing as before, passing tag, have it as has passed or passed. Else, you can say that not passed. Let's try this. And you see that pretty much the output is similar, but now if you want to use this variable over and over in your program, it's easier to do it because you don't have to do this comparison. You can just use this variable over here. It's just an example. It doesn't have to make sense. I'm just trying to teach you different things with this example. So even if it doesn't make sense that much, that's okay. Just example. So we can do the same thing in JavaScript. The syntax is a little bit different. So here we need to use parentheses for that, and you need to use curly brackets here. One thing about Python that I completely forgot about that. So in these cases, when you want to say that after this condition, do all these things, for instance, if this condition is true, do this, assign false to this variable. So basically you ask the code to do this after this condition. But how the program can tell that you want these lines for this condition? Why it just considers this line, not all these lines? It works based on the indentation it has. So if I get rid of this indentation, you see that the program doesn't work because that. So indentation basically defines the block of code for us. And based on indentation, we can say that we want these lines of code must be executed when the condition is true. Otherwise, do this. That's the whole point of using blocks or indentations here. Now here in JavaScript, we don't have to use indentations at all. We can get rid of indentations, but we need to use curly brackets to define the blocks of code we want to run. So like this. Okay, now we have these. Let's try it. It's better to use this one. True has passed, passing text, var, and so also here we need to use, so you need to close the opening curly brackets and also open another one here. This is the right way to do it. Close bracket, open and close. So let's see. Okay. Now we just need to replace this with sport here. $sign. And you can see that it works. So the score is 4, but so we need to change this, make it false Okay, now if I run it again, so it looks good. This student has passed the test. We can have the same thing in PHP. Again, PHP is pretty much similar to JavaScript, so you don't have to do that much. Here, I just need to add the dollar signs. Dollar signs as well here. And let's see if there's any error. Okay, there is error here. And we forgot to put semicolons at the end of the statement. You don't need to do it for all lines, just after each statement. This is one statement and the whole is one statement. So if I run this, we don't need to use dollar sign here. And now it looks good. Just copy this and use it over here. And oops, we don't need to do that. We just need to use %, run it, and you see that it works fine. So this is how you can use if conditions in these three languages. Now the last piece for this puzzle, which is really important, is for loops. I was supposed to actually go ahead with function and classes as well in this course, crash course, but I think it's not really necessary to learn these things for doing this task. And basically with this task, I wanted to teach all the basic things. So you can live without functions or classes, and it's going to take long to learn those topics. So I'm going to skip it in this crash course. As the last piece, let's learn how we can use loops and why we need loops in the first place. So here, let me clean the code a little bit. The message here is exactly like what we want, but the problem here is that it does this only for one student. But what if we want to print these message for all the students? So here we can use for loops. The reason we started using lists was that we can use for loops here. So basically I can say that I can, comment these things. So I can move this. Let me get rid of this print function. I can move this to top over here. And because I need to calculate the has passed variable and also passing text for all the students, I need to do it for each student separately. So here I have a list of students, so I can go through each item with for loop, and then I can do this functionality here. So I can say that for students in list of students. And now again here, after that, I want to say that for each student in this list, do these things for me. So I need to define the block of code I want the program to do for me. So with indentation, I can define the block of code I want. So here it will execute these lines of code for each student because I use indentation for this block of code over here. So here it said goes to student. Now we, instead of a simple variable, we have a dictionary for each student. Basically, if I let me comment this. Actually, I can print student here, and I can comment out the other lines. you see that the output is like this. It prints out each student object. So now that we have student information in dictionaries, we, instead of using school like this, we need to use student, and we need to say we want to have the value for this key like this. And we want to save this has passed for each student. So we can again use the student object like this. And same thing over here. Now, if I print, let me comment this out. If I print a student, you should see the has passed value basically inside this student object. Let me run this. And you see that we have has passed for each student. And I need to fix this one. There's something wrong with it. So if I change this to 1.5, you see that for this student has passed is true, and for this one has passed is false. So we don't have to do it one by one for each student. We just need to use for loops here to loop through all the items in the list and do everything we want for every and each item. Okay, now we have this. Let me get rid of that, and I can use this again. And here again, we can keep this inside the students object so that we can use it later. Now inside this message, we actually can use the student object. The only thing we need to do just paste it inside the for block, because we want to replace it with each item. So here I can say that student object first name, let's do the same thing for last name, for score, score here, and so now I just need to grab print and also add it to the block for full loop. So here, something's wrong here. Let's see. We have a student. We have first name, basically. Maybe it's better to print student to see how it looks. Maybe I can comment these lines. And first name, we have first name, last name. It looks good to me, but I just need to, let's try this. It also looks good. So let's get rid of the rest of the text. Can try it. So I think it's a good example that we can try with ChatGPT to see what's wrong. So let me copy this to see if ChatGPT is able to find a problem or not. So if code is, it gives this error. copy that and paste it here. What's the problem? Oh, okay, now I understand what is wrong here. So because we use double quotation to wrap this text here, um, we can't use double quotation again here. So instead of that, we need to use single quotation here, and that's the solution. Now let's run it again, and you can see that we have two different texts for two students, and the result is based on the score the student has and based on their first name and last name, which is really amazing. And you can add more students to this list of students, and this is how you can do it. So we can have the same thing in JavaScript and PHP as well. So we have for loops there as well. And the only difference is that I can just copy this maybe and put it um, over here. And here you don't have to have indentation, but it's good to follow, this convention. It's good to follow indentation in these cases. It's not necessary the code will work without that, but for the sake of, clean coding, it's good to have this kind of indentation as well. So we have a same thing here in JavaScript when we have lists or arrays basically. And we need to say for each. Actually, there are a couple of, for loops in JavaScript, but the one we want to use here is like this. So instead of in, we can use of, student of list of students, and we need to use curly brackets to define the block of code for this for loop. And actually we want to move this to remove that, move this here, and then want to wrap this as well. Close the bracket here. And now we want to use student object basically instead of the single variables. Like this and this again. And you don't have to add the var keyword here because we're not defining a new variable, it's just a part of the existing variable. And let's see what else here we have to use the right variable. Okay, now also here, I think safely we can use double quotation here. And also here. Okay, let's see this. Okay, Apparently it works fine. Let me change this score to maybe 1.5. And yes, now we have different messages for different students based on their score. And also in PHP, we can use for each to loop through the items of a list. So here I can say for each, and I need to say, let's grab this from here, put it before the actual for loop over here. Now I can use this for each as, so basically this is the name of the list, the variable for the list, and here this is the variable that will keep the value for each item. So I can say student. And here we again use curly brackets. And of course, it's better to have indentation. It's not necessary, but it's better to have it. Let's put the closing curly bracket here so we can cover all the lines we want. I think it's good already. Now we need to use this. And we can assign, we can create a new key and assign a value to that key like this, instead of using equal sign only. And same thing here and here. Okay, and here also. You see, it's just replacing and fixing some small things. If you copy the code from another language, okay, now I think it's ready. Let's see, let's just try to see if there is any error or not. Okay, yeah, there is, so we don't need to use the arrow here. Okay, it's good. Let's try it. Okay, it seems it works fine. The only thing we need here is a break line. So we have two different messages for different students. If I change this, and you can add more students to this. So this is how we can actually use Python, JavaScript, and PHP to solve this puzzle, to accomplish this task. And basically with this task, we learned the basic things and the fundamental things about programming. And I can say that in all the other languages, it's pretty much like this. It can be a little bit different, but the gist of it is like this. The core idea is like this. And especially if you want to use PHP, JavaScript, or Python, they're all really similar to each other. And I can say that programming and coding is like this. Pretty much everything is on top of these basics that I taught you here. I think That's enough for this crash course. I think on top of this, you can learn more new things from other courses and other videos. And actually, I'm working on a bigger course, a more comprehensive course that contain all sorts of information with more details about programming in these three languages, Python, JavaScript, and PHP. I will let you know as soon as I'm done with that course, as soon as the course is out. I'll let you know. But I think that's what I wanted to teach you. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this. Please consider subscribing to my channel and also hit the like button or leave a comment if you like. Thank you. Have a nice day.